Welcome to The Dad Lawyer, a program produced by the Parents Estate Planning Law Firm in conjunction with ActonTV. I'm your host, David Feakes, founder of the Parents Estate Planning Law Firm in Acton. The Dad Lawyer is a program for parents with young children and highlights the legal and financial issues that are specific to parents and growing families in the Acton and surrounding communities. We've got a great show for you today. I'm joined today by the Stock Sisters, financial advisors in our community. Before we get started, I want to thank everybody in our local communities for voting the Parents Estate Planning Law Firm as the favorite lawyer and law firm in Acton. So thank you to our clients, thank you to community members who voted for us. We're very proud and honored to be voted your favorite lawyer in the community. So joining me today is Samantha and Jessica Scott, the Stock Sisters. They are financial advisors based out of Framingham, but serving the local area. So Jessica and Samantha, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us.
So first, tell us a little bit about yourselves, and most particularly, how you got the names the Stock Sisters.
It's a two-part answer.
Yeah, so Samantha and I are both independent financial advisors, like you mentioned. This goes back generations. My grandfather was a advisor way back in the 60s. My father was then an advisor, and Sam and I have been now in the business, me for 8 years and her for 5.
Yep.
And we've been working together just with general population, just kind of informing everybody and advising them. And because we are known to our friends as the Scott Sisters, this became a very obvious solution that we would be the Stock Sisters. So we started focusing on women because we are both young women, and we thought that the Stock Sisters kind of resonated that purpose.
What is it about your firm and what is it about each of you that makes you a little bit different, if at all, from other financial advisors?
I think the first thing that makes us different is the most obvious thing. We're young women. Most financial advisors are middle-aged men. So instead of shying away from that aspect of who we are, we kind of like to be proud of it and embrace it. Sage Point Financial is our broker-dealer. They are different because they're an independent broker-dealer. So many firms sort of tell their advisors what products and what investments they can recommend. Sage Point is the opposite of that. So they encourage and sort of support its advisors, and they want us to be totally independent. So every advisor is an independent contractor, meaning they're not employees of the firm. There's no quotas or sales goals or anything like that, which is nice. And I think what else?
It just gives us a lot of freedom, and it enables us to give unbiased advice. So that's the biggest difference, aside from who we are as individuals.
And for the two of you, what is what I would call your why? Why financial services?
One summer, I just decided I would take the Series 6 exam and passed it. And I started going on meetings with my father, and I really enjoyed the personal interaction with people. And that was something that I didn't necessarily always consider as, when you think of finance, it didn't really occur to me that was a part of it. So having realized that was something that I would get to do and actually help people, I just kind of fell in love with it and knew that it was what I wanted to do.
Jessica got started first. I was actually working in retail banking when she started as an advisor with my dad. And I loved what I did, but she definitely had more freedom and better client relationships because of that unbiased advice she was able to provide, where I was sort of stuck offering CDs and certain fixed products that aren't always right for the client. So after being at the bank for 3 years and getting licensed with them, I jumped ship and went independent and joined my father and sister.
Mm-hmm.
And with a focus on women, and I would assume on families as well, why that focus?
So we are women, so we have a certain, we understand that that's an important part. It's just not as highlighted. I think there's a lot of female investors out there, and there's not as many female advisors. And just in my experience over the first few years being in business, I found that the women that I did advise were so happy to have a female that they could communicate with. So when Sam came on, it just seemed like a great opportunity for us to team up and maybe give access to those other people who might be thinking the same thing. And because I think a lot of times people, especially women, might feel intimidated going into an office and speaking to maybe like a man in a suit. So we kind of were hoping to bridge that gap a little and make people feel more comfortable so that more women would get invested, and if they're the ones who are, the parents of children, their wives, and they're running the household, that they would feel empowered to kind of take charge and get things going, I guess.
Yeah.
See, an interesting thing is what I found in estate planning is that moms are always the driver
Yeah.
of the planning. Is that something that you find in the married couples that you deal with, that the women are the drivers of the planning?
They have a more like emotional approach to investing, whereas men are more numbers based, where women want to really find out, okay, how is this going to play out long term? And eventually the men typically do succumb to the women, so that works out well.
A lot of times in a meeting with a man and a woman, husband and wife, when you ask questions, just like you're asking us now, she always is the one that sort of answers the question first.
Yeah.
So I think
I guess we shouldn't have been so surprised by that, but
yeah.
When you're working with young families, particularly, what would you say to young families about what financial planning really is?
do you want to take that?
So financial planning isn't just managing an IRA or a 401k or one single account. Financial planning is all about the big picture. So uncovering, maybe a family has 8 different accounts between their 529 and a 401k and an IRA. So a lot of advisors will just manage one account. It's very important to us to see the big picture, to offer life insurance, long-term care, estate planning. So we refer out to estate attorneys like yourself.
So specifically for young families, I think we focus on 529 plans, college planning, and then that second element that you mentioned is life insurance, because I think a lot of people feel like if they don't have a lot of money, extra money in the way they consider it, they don't even think about putting money aside for college. They just kind of think, well, that's not something I can do. But we like to be able to show people that there is a way to kind of tuck away even just a small amount when you're starting with a young kid or even a baby. I mean, time is your biggest asset. So we encourage people to get that started as soon as possible, because that compounding effect will play a big role in what they'll have, 18 years down the road.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing that we try to get people started with right away.
Right. And in addition to kind of focusing on women, what else would you consider to be unique about the way you practice?
So I think there was 3 different unique pieces. So all advisors offer advice and then long-term planning. Most advisors do. Some of the unique services that we provide. Number one, it's our events. So we like to get our clients involved with us. We did our first Women in Wealth event last year, and it was a way for us to provide retirement planning advice and solutions in a very relaxed setting. So we actually will serve wine and hors d'oeuvres and make it into like a ladies' night out.
And we focus on the education part of it so that people aren't just blindly taking our advice. We really take pride in the fact that when people leave our office, they feel like they know what they just signed up for. And it's not just kind of walking away with, what did I just do? It's very educational based. And we also pride ourselves in being down to earth, just kind of, don't be intimidated. We're not going to pressure you into anything. It's more conversational. It's just making sure that people have the information they need to make informed decisions that they will leave feeling really comfortable about.
I think something else would be the blog. So we started a blog also about a year ago, and that's a way for even our non-clients just to check in and kind of educate themselves on some new topic without going to an encyclopedia and looking up boring terminologies. we try to write educational pieces, but in a very fun, laid-back, relaxed way, and I think that's different.
TheStockSisters.com, by the way.
No, I've seen the blog. It's good.
Thank you.
If you were talking to a family with young kids or a young family, I know what my clients tend to ask me that is not law related. What do I need to know about this or that? If you were giving advice to a young family about what's the number one thing or what's one thing that you need to focus on in terms of financial planning, what would that be? Recognizing that you guys might have different answers to that.
Okay, so it depends certainly on the family, but in a general sense, if there's a young family just starting out, like I mentioned before, if they have young kids, I think I would normally tell them that estate planning is pretty important, but that's not something I do, so luckily we have people like you. But in addition to that, I think that life insurance is extremely important, because a lot of times in a young family, it's one spouse is working, the other is not. There's a lot of bills that are, mortgages that are fairly new, and they're going to have a long lifespan until they're paid off. So having that life insurance will give the family peace of mind that if something does happen, those expenses will be covered. And if they're not used, in that short interim, they can perhaps pay for college and other things down the road. So I think that's a good starting point. And term insurance, for instance, is fairly expensive. Inexpensive. I think a lot of people are surprised at how affordable it is. So that's something. And then you had mentioned earlier, just
having a financial advisor. Without that, none of these other pieces can come together. So if it was me saying the number one thing to do with getting started with your family planning for the long term is just meet with an advisor. Hire someone to help you. Have someone you can call for questions. And
it's what we do full time while you're, everyone else is so busy. So it's not, you shouldn't have to take it all on yourself, I guess.
Yeah, so I think having an advisor, someone who can guide you, kind of hear what your issues are.
Right.
As a parent myself, I would always say 529. The best piece of financial advice I ever got from our own financial advisor was start a 529 early,
soon as
fund it
possible.
early, and I've just enjoyed watching
it grow.
those funds grow. And what my own mother did for my kids and for each of her grandchildren was she started a 529 for each of her grandchildren
Yes.
from the moment they were born.
we have a few clients that do
And every month just put a little bit in. It wasn't a spectacular amount,
Yeah.
but over time, I know that when my oldest daughter Hannah gets to be a senior in college, basically her senior year is pretty much going to be paid for off the
great.
529 that my mother just continuously put a little bit of money into every month.
It's so amazing when you watch numbers, they just grow so quickly, or not so quickly, but so easily over time. That time being your biggest asset. So like you said, the earlier you start doing that, the more money you're going to have for college later. And that is the most stressful time for parents, I find, when their kids are going off to school. How am I going to pay for this? If you started planning that earlier, your future self will thank you, basically.
Definitely.
So I know with my clients, we have a very specific process for making sure that estate plans get reviewed. We say about every 3 years, you should be pulling out an estate plan and looking at it. Is there advice that you give for families, for clients, about how often they should be reviewing their financial plan?
So I would say at least, we both agree that at least once a year at the minimum. We always check in quarterly just to kind of make sure that the client is on the same page, nothing's changed. And then always, whenever there's a life-changing event, a marriage, a baby, a death, an inheritance.
Job change, job loss. Any major life event, obviously, kind of let's reassess, because that can change your risk tolerance, it could change your time horizon. And again, we always reach out to our clients quarterly, because even if your life hasn't changed, the market may have changed. So it's good to kind of keep that on an ongoing basis. And then, a good advisor would be looking at it much more frequently than that anyway, but just to kind of make sure that you're on the same page with the client. Definitely, individually, people should look at it at least once a year.
And how do you guys work with other professionals, CPAs, estate planning attorneys, real estate agents? Do you maintain relationships? Do you kind of coordinate financial planning among other disciplines?
We have 2 CPAs that we work with and 2 estate planning attorneys. We kind of base it on what the client needs. So I think you had actually said this to us earlier, is that every client is different and they have different personalities and different needs. So depending on that client, we'll pick and choose what professional is most suitable for them. And then we always offer to go in that first meeting with the client in case they kind of need a hand to hold during that process.
Right.
And that way we know what's going on behind the scenes, and we can take that paperwork or that strategy or that plan and sort of implement it with our investments as well.
Because we do comprehensive financial planning, all of those things really go hand in hand. So we like to be in a relationship with the person who's doing the estate planning and even doing the taxes, because they all kind of form this big picture. So for us to make sure that we're doing our job correctly, it's much better to know what's going on in all these other areas of their life. So we do think that's important.
And will you go in and meet with clients in the office of one of their other planners? So for example, if they're working with an estate planning attorney or a CPA, will you go meet with that new client in the office of somebody they're already working with?
Absolutely, yes.
One of the things that we do in addition to that, so driving out to places and actually going on the road, we have a lot of clients who have been clients of our firms for a very long time, and they're used to that old school sort of come meet me at my kitchen table and have a cup of coffee with me. And so we love doing that, because sometimes people don't want to make it out to the office, and other times you're busy with kids and errands and sports. So we will certainly go out and meet them wherever they need us to.
Including other professional offices. We encourage it. I think it's good for us to be there.
Yeah, I know for a lot of my clients, they really they already know us, they know our office, they're comfortable in our house, they've been there a number of times, and it just makes it really easy to make that transition to a new planning professional.
Absolutely.
So one of the things, again, that I know from my clients is when they come in the office, they are kind of sheepishly explaining to me how long they have had estate planning on their to-do list.
Yes.
I'm going to guess that a lot of them have had financial planning on their to-do list for a long time as well. Any advice to someone who's coming in to see you who has had financial planning on their to-do list for an extended period of time?
So we run across the same thing almost every time that someone comes in who isn't an existing client and says, oh, finally I'm here, I'm so glad I'm finally doing it. And that is the number one thing. It will be a relief once you're done. But we just would encourage you to get all your stuff together first, put it in a folder, and just get your questions written down before you even get to an office. And even more important than that, call around and maybe interview a couple before you meet with them and start displaying all your personal information. I think a lot of people are hesitant to reveal a lot up front to someone they don't know. I mean, it's really personal stuff. And I also feel like there's this impression that they're going to be pressured to do something. So I think the most crucial part about it is to make sure that the advisor that you do choose to work with is someone you're really comfortable with and just have a personal relationship with, that you're not feeling like under the gun all the time. And then check that off your list and you will just feel like a huge weight lifted. Everyone who does come in finally says the same thing. Whew, glad that's done.
Yeah.
And I got to circle back to the life insurance issue, because that is the question I get asked, even though I have nothing to do with life insurance. I don't sell life insurance. I don't advise on life insurance. But the number one question I get asked by clients is, do I have enough life insurance? Share a little bit about the conversation around that, because I would say that the answer is it depends. It depends on what you need the insurance to do. But share a little bit about the conversation that you would have, especially with a young family, about how much is enough life insurance.
I'll let you take that one.
Okay, so typically there's different reasons for having life insurance. The major reason for a lot of people is to replace one person's or both persons' income. If that's the case, there's very simple questions we can ask to figure out how much of that needs to be replaced, which would be, what is that income annually, and how long will you need that income coming in to cover the expenses that you currently have. And then you determine which, this gets kind of complicated, but which interest rate you expect to get, so you know which lump sum you need to have in order to get that amount of income going forward. In other cases, it's something as simple as, our mortgage is almost paid for. In 10 years, it'll be paid for. We just need that lump sum to cover it in case anything happens. That's a pretty simple 10-year term policy of that lump sum amount. So I think the conversation is really based on, what are your needs? What is your income? Is there a breadwinner, or are you both equals? In a lot of cases now, we find that both the husband and wife are both working, and if anything happened to either of them, that would drastically change their lifestyle. So life insurance is really there to eliminate that level of stress when you're already going through something so stressful.
Well
so
said.
It's just a conversation. It takes, just acquire as much information. We can plug it into a calculator and tell you, do you have enough? A lot of people think they do because they have it through work, but that's not always the case.
They always think that's enough. I have it through work, so I'm all set. But
Well, I have it through work, but what happens if you leave the job?
Right.
Is it portable?
Right, you gotta
Can it
check
go
that
with
too.
you?
a lot of times it's not.
Yeah, sometimes yes, sometimes no. And I think one other factor that I see with a lot of clients is there are some things that could be existing in their lives which would dictate against term versus whole or variable
Yes.
life insurance. People tend to think in terms of term because they're kind of indoctrinated in that
Yeah.
way by listening to kind of, on the radio or TV
Right.
financial
Well,
gurus.
it's the easiest one to just push.
But what I've seen a lot is, families with a child with special needs
Oh, yes.
who have ongoing care needs throughout a lifetime. A term policy just won't
And
work.
that is a scenario where it's really important that we work with estate planning attorneys, because instead of just having a beneficiary, now you need to have a trust set up and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's exactly why we can't just tell you how much insurance you need. We need to know, what is your life like and what's going on, what's going to be going on down the road and what's already happening now.
All right, so before we wrap up today, where can people find you on the
Go ahead,
on the
Sam.
internet?
So it's thestocksisters.com. That's our website for women. So on that website, that has the blog, all of our information about upcoming events, a little bit about us, sort of our story, our background.
We're also on like social media, Instagram at the Stock Sisters, and Facebook. You can find us there as well.
And we're on Twitter. Twitter, we're still getting used to. Twitter's a new platform for
Yeah,
us.
don't expect too much tweeting from us yet.
Yeah, we're on
getting
there.
You could just take your Facebook stuff and,
Yeah, just
and
push it over.
Exactly.
which is what we do in the office. We're still getting in tune with Instagram.
Yeah.
A lot of
We're
work.
not- We're not there yet. All right, well, I want to thank you for joining me for this edition of The Dad Lawyer, and hope you'll join us again next month. If you have any questions about today's discussion or about legal planning for your family, you can visit us on the web at www.parentsestate-planning.com, or you can call our office directly in Acton at 978-263-6900 for additional articles and information about legal and financial challenges facing parents of growing families. You can visit thedadlawyer.com. Thanks again for joining me, and we'll see you again next time.